Imagine being a mother. You remember the morning sickness. You remember the first kick. You remember the agonizing hours of labor, the smell of the hospital room, and that first moment you held your baby in your arms. There is no doubt in your mind that child is yours, flesh of your flesh, blood of your blood. Now, imagine a government official looking you in the eye and telling you that you are lying. Not just lying, but that you are a criminal. Imagine them telling you that according to the most advanced, infallible technology of the 21st century, DNA testing, you are a stranger to your own children. This isn't a dystopian fiction. This is the terrifying true story of Lydia Fairchild. In 2002, she became the center of a medical and legal hurricane that would shatter our understanding of human biology. She was a woman fighting for her life against a system that believed DNA never lies. But the system was wrong. Lydia wasn't just one person. She was harboring a secret deep inside her cells, a secret she didn't even know existed. A ghost. The welfare trap. The year is 2002. The place is Washington State. Lydia Fairchild is a young mother of two, pregnant with her third child. She is struggling. Like millions of Americans, she faced a rough patch after separating from the father of her children, Jamie Townsend. To make ends meet, to put food on the table, she did what any responsible parent would do. She applied for state enforcement of child support. It was a standard bureaucratic procedure, just paperwork. Or so she thought. As part of the application, the state required DNA testing, not to prove Lydia was the mother, that was assumed, but to prove Jamie was the father, so the state could legally mandate child support payments. It was supposed to be a formality, a simple cheek swab. In December 2002, Lydia and Jamie went to the clinic. They laughed, they swabbed their cheeks, and they went home. They didn't know it yet, but that cotton swab had just initiated a countdown that would threaten to destroy their entire family. Weeks later, Lydia was called into the Department of Social and Health Services, DSHS. She expected a check or maybe a confirmation number. Instead, she walked into an interrogation. The caseworker didn't smile. She looked at Lydia with a mix of confusion and suspicion. She asked, "Who are you?" Lydia, baffled, replied, "I'm Lydia Fairchild." The caseworker shook her head. "No. Who are you to these children?" The words hit Lydia like a physical blow. The DNA test results were conclusive. Jamie Townsend was indeed the father of the children. But Lydia Fairchild, the test stated there was a 0% probability that she was the mother. Let that sink in. 0%. According to the genetic code, the biological fingerprint that courts across the world use to send men to the electric chair, Lydia was a total stranger to the children she raised. The state's logic was cold and binary. If the DNA doesn't match, you are not the mother. And if you are not the mother, but you are claiming welfare for them, you are committing fraud. But it got darker. If she wasn't the mother, who was? Had she kidnapped them? Was she a surrogate involved in a black market baby scheme? The prosecution didn't just deny her financial aid. They launched an investigation into welfare fraud. And the ultimate threat hung in the air like a guillotine. They were going to take the children away. The witness to the impossible. Lydia was living a nightmare. She knew she gave birth to them. Her family knew. Her ex-boyfriend knew. But how do you argue with science? In the 21st century, DNA is God. If you say one thing and the DNA says another, the DNA wins every time. She hired a lawyer, Alan Tyndall. At first, even he was skeptical. He looked at the lab reports. He looked at Lydia. In his career, DNA tests didn't make mistakes like this. False negatives are 1 in a billion. He assumed she was confused or perhaps lying to him. But Lydia had one card left to play. She was pregnant with her third child. This unborn baby was the ultimate alibi. The state prosecutors were so confident in their science that they made a bet. They agreed to have an officer of the court present in the delivery room. The plan was simple. The officer would witness the birth. They would watch the baby leave Lydia's body, and mere seconds later, they would take blood samples from both the baby and Lydia. There could be no swap, no trickery, no fraud. The day came. Lydia went into labor. Through the pain and the exhaustion, she felt a glimmer of hope. This would prove them wrong. This would end the nightmare. The baby was born. The blood was drawn. The samples were rushed to the lab. 2 weeks later, the results came back. The court officer testified, "I saw the baby come out of her." The lab technician testified, "The DNA does not match." Panic. Absolute panic. Even with a court witness, the science said Lydia was lying. The judge was baffled. The prosecution was stunned. Lydia was terrified. How could a woman give birth to a child that genetically did not belong to her? Was she an alien? Was this a divine miracle? Or was science missing something fundamental about human nature? Lydia was on the verge of losing everything. Her children were about to be placed in foster care. She was facing jail time. But miles away in Boston, a similar mystery had just been solved, and it was the only thing that could save her. The Boston Clue. Karen Keegan. While Lydia was fighting for her life in Washington, a completely different drama had unfolded in Boston, involving a woman named Karen Keegan. Karen needed a kidney transplant. Her family, being the loving unit they were, lined up to donate. Her 3 adult sons were tested to see if they were a match. It should have been straightforward. But the doctors at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center found something strange. 2 of Karen's 3 sons did not have a genetic match to her. It was the same impossibility. But unlike Lydia, Karen wasn't on trial. She was a patient. The doctors weren't prosecutors. They were scientists. They didn't accuse her of fraud. They asked, why? The medical team, led by Dr. Lynn Ull, went on a detective hunt. They tested samples from all over Karen's body, her blood, her cheek cells, her hair follicles. Every single test showed the same DNA profile, a profile that did not match her son's. They were about to give up, but then they remembered something. Karen had undergone a thyroid surgery years prior. A piece of her tissue was preserved in a medical archive. They retrieved the sample. They extracted the DNA, and there it was. The DNA in Karen's thyroid tissue was different from the DNA in her blood. Karen Keegan was not one person. She was 2. This was the breakthrough. Lydia's lawyer, Alan Tyndall, stumbled upon an article about Karen Keegan in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was a long shot. It sounded like science fiction, but it was the only explanation that fit the facts. He convinced the judge to delay the verdict. He argued that Lydia Fairchild might be a chimera. The ghost in the womb. The science explained. To understand what happened to Lydia and Karen, we have to go back to the very beginning, to the first few days of conception. In Greek mythology, a chimera is a monster, a hybrid beast with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent. 3 animals in one. In human biology, a chimera is something far more subtle, but equally fascinating. Imagine Lydia's mother, decades ago, was pregnant. She wasn't pregnant with just Lydia. She was pregnant with fraternal twins. 2 separate eggs fertilized by 2 separate sperm. 2 potential lives. 2 unique DNA codes. Usually, these 2 eggs implant separately and grow into 2 babies, a brother and a sister, or 2 sisters. But sometimes, in the brutal and crowded environment of the early womb, something rare happens. The 2 zygotes drift too close together. Instead of developing side by side, one twin absorbs the other. This is known as vanishing twin syndrome, but in this case, the twin didn't vanish, it was integrated. The two embryos fused into a single organism. As this single baby grew, the baby that would become Lydia, Fairchild's cells from the two different twins were allocated to different parts of her body. One twin's DNA built her blood and her skin. This is the DNA that showed up on the cheek swab. This is Lydia. But the other twin, the ghost twin, her DNA didn't disappear. It went on to build other organs, specifically her ovaries. This is the terrifying realization. When Lydia grew up and had children, the eggs she released did not carry her DNA. They carried the DNA of her unborn twin sister. Biologically speaking, Lydia's children were not her children. They were her nieces and nephews. She was the aunt to her own babies. The final test. Armed with this theory, Lydia's lawyer demanded a new round of tests. A cheek swab wasn't enough. A blood test wasn't enough. They needed to find the ghost. They performed a cervical smear. They needed cells from her reproductive tract, the domain of the hidden twin. The samples were sent to the lab. The waiting was excruciating. If this failed, there was no other science to save her. The results came back. The DNA from Lydia's cervix was a match. It matched her children. It matched the third baby. The ghost twin had been found. The fraud charges were dropped immediately. The state of Washington had to apologize. Lydia Fairchild was allowed to keep her children. The nightmare was over. But the psychological impact? That doesn't just go away. Lydia had to come to terms with the fact that she was not an individual. She was a fusion of two souls. She was living proof that our definition of self is much more fragile than we think. The invisible legion, microchimerism. Lydia Fairchild's story had a happy ending, but for scientists, it opened a door that can never be closed. Lydia was a tetragametic chimera, a fusion of two embryos. This is incredibly rare. There are only about 100 documented cases in human history. So you might be thinking, that's a crazy story, but it has nothing to do with me. You would be wrong. While full-body fusion is rare, there is another form of chimerism that is disturbingly common. It's called microchimerism. And if you are a mother, or if you have ever been pregnant, there is a very high probability that you are a chimera right now. During pregnancy, the placenta is not a perfect barrier. It's a two-way street. Nutrients go in, but cells come out. Fetal cells escape the womb. They migrate into the mother's bloodstream. And they don't just die, they travel. They hunt for a home. Scientists have found male DNA, cells containing the Y chromosome, living inside the brains of women who had sons decades ago. These cells aren't just tourists, they integrate. They become heart muscle. They become liver tissue. They even weave themselves into the neural architecture of the mother's brain. Think about that. If you are a mother, a piece of your child is literally helping your heartbeat right now. A piece of them is sparking the neurons that allow you to think. But it goes both ways. You also carry cells from your mother, and she carries cells from her mother. We like to think of ourselves as individuals, single, bordered entities. But biologically, we are like Russian dolls. We are a colony. We are walking vessels containing the genetic echoes of our ancestors and our descendants, all living together under one skin. Lydia was just the most extreme example of a universal truth. I is an illusion. We is the reality. The forensic nightmare. Justice is blind. Now, let's take this biological reality and apply it to the one place where truth must be absolute, the criminal justice system. We have built our entire modern legal system on a single pillar. DNA is the gold standard. If your DNA is at the crime scene, you were there. Period. But the Lydia Fairchild case shattered that pillar, and it begs a terrifying question. How many innocent people are in prison right now because of chimerism? Consider this scenario. A Chimera man commits a violent crime. He struggles with the victim. He scratches them, leaving skin cells under the victim's fingernails. The police collect the DNA, but here's the catch. The skin cells carry the DNA of the Chimera's ghost twin. But when the police arrest the suspect and take a cheek swab, they get the DNA of the dominant self. The profiles don't match. The killer walks free. The perfect biological crime. Or reverse it. Imagine a bone marrow transplant. If you receive a bone marrow transplant, your blood DNA changes to match the donor. In 2004, a violent assault occurred in Alaska. The DNA from the crime scene matched a man who was already in prison. Impossible, right? It turned out the prisoner had donated bone marrow years earlier to his brother. His brother was the criminal. But because the brother now carried the prisoner's blood DNA, the innocent man was implicated. DNA is not a name tag. It is not a barcode. It is biological material that can move, swap, fuse, and hide. Lydia Fairchild was lucky. She was pregnant, which gave her an alibi. She had a lawyer who fought for her. But what about a man accused of murder 10 years ago? What about a rape suspect where the only evidence is genetic? If they were a chimera and nobody checked, they would be rotting in a cell today screaming a truth that science is only just beginning to hear. The existential void. Who are you? This brings us to the final, most uncomfortable question. The question that has haunted philosophers for millennia, but now haunts biologists too. Who are you? If you were Lydia Fairchild, are you the woman who remembers growing up? Or are you the sister who died in the womb but built your ovaries? If you commit a crime, is it you? Or is it the genetic ghost influencing your brain chemistry? We cling to the idea of identity. We have names, social security numbers, fingerprints. We want to believe we are solid. But nature doesn't care about our need for identity. Nature cares about survival. If fusing two embryos into one makes a stronger organism, nature will do it. If sending cells from baby to mother helps the mother survive, nature will do it. We are not monolithic statues. We are fluid mosaics. We are rivers of genetic information, constantly flowing, merging, and branching. The conclusion. The unseen world. Lydia Fairchild still lives in Washington. Her children are grown now. The court records are closed, but her medical file remains one of the most important documents in human history. She taught us that the ghost twin isn't a paranormal story. It isn't a campfire tale. It is a biological reality living inside an unknown number of people walking the streets today. Maybe you were one of them. Maybe you have a patch of skin that tans differently. Maybe you have two different colored eyes. Or maybe the only evidence is hidden deep inside your liver or your blood, waiting for a DNA test to reveal a stranger. The next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, is that really me? Or is it us? If you want to dive deeper into the mysteries of the human body, check out our video on the Habsburg jaw and the devastating cost of royal inbreeding right here. I'm Your Name, and this is Lost Origins.